You think it's just bad luck, that you've simply happened to meet the wrong people again and again. But if you look closely, you'll begin to realize something very hard to accept. Those kinds of people don't appear in your life by accident. They may differ in faces, circumstances, and how things begin, but the ending is always the same. You give a lot, you try to understand, you try to hold on, and in the end, you're the one left exhausted, hurt, and asking, why does this keep happening to me? And here's the part. No one tells you directly. It's not because you're weak, and it's not because you attract bad people in the way you think. It's because there is something within you that toxic people can recognize instantly, something that makes them stay, test your limits, and slowly take up your space, while you don't even realize it's happening. And once you understand this, you won't just understand why you keep meeting the same kind of people, you'll also understand how to make it stop, once and for all. The first thing you need to understand is that this doesn't start with them. It starts with how you respond in a pattern so familiar that you don't even notice it yourself. You tend to see the good in others, even when they've never given you a reason to believe it. You can sense their pain, their instability, the things they don't say, and instead of stepping back, you move closer. You think that if you're patient enough, sincere enough, understanding enough, then things will be different, that this time they won't be like the others before. But what you don't realize is the way you understand too quickly is exactly what makes you overlook the important signs. The things they say that make you uncomfortable, you explain them away for them. The actions that hurt you, you find reasons to justify them. The boundaries you should have set from the beginning, you delay, just because you don't want to create tension. And that's the moment everything starts to shift off balance. Not when they become toxic, but when you begin accepting what you would normally never accept. Toxic people don't need to break your boundaries all at once. They just need to test them, little by little. A comment that goes slightly too far, a moment where you feel uncomfortable, a time when you want to say no, but choose silence instead. And each time that happens, they're not changing you. They're learning how you operate. They learn that you will forgive. They learn that you will stay. And most importantly, they learn that you will question your own feelings before you ever question them. And once that happens, nothing is random anymore. It becomes a pattern, a loop you don't see, but they see very clearly. But what makes this loop so hard to escape is not because you're not strong enough. It's because a part of you actually finds it familiar. It sounds irrational. Why would you feel familiar with something that hurts you? But if you look a little deeper, you'll begin to realize the way that person treats you, the inconsistency, the silence, the way they pull you in and then push you away. It's not entirely new. It resembles a feeling you've experienced before, maybe from when you were younger, when you had to read other people's emotions to avoid upsetting them, when you learned to stay quiet to keep the peace, when love didn't feel like something that came naturally, but something you had to earn. And over time, you stopped recognizing that as abnormal. It became your standard. So when you meet someone who makes you try harder, think more, do more to keep them, a part of you doesn't label it as a red flag. It labels it as, that's why you can walk away from someone good, because you don't feel much, but stay with someone who drains you, because you feel so much. But what you're feeling is not connection. It's an old response, being reactivated in a new relationship. And that's the most dangerous part, because when something feels both familiar and emotionally intense, it's very easy to mistake it for fate. And at this point, there's a truth that very few people are willing to say out loud. You are not the one being chosen. You are the one who keeps choosing the same type of person in a very unconscious way. Not from the beginning, but through small decisions you don't even notice. You choose to reply to messages even when you feel uncomfortable. You choose to stay in conversations that drain you. You choose to give them another chance, even when they haven't truly changed. Each of those choices, on its own, seems small, but when they add up, they form a familiar path, one that leads you right back to the same kind of relationship. You don't see yourself as choosing them. You think you're just trying to keep things good. But toxic people don't see it that way. They don't listen to what you say. They don't care how well-intentioned you are. They watch how you respond. They observe how long you stay silent before you speak your truth. They see how much you'll tolerate before you leave. And most importantly, they watch whether you're willing to lose them or not. And if the answer is no, then from that moment on, the power in the relationship has already started to shift. Not because they are stronger than you, but because you are willing to stay, even when you're no longer being treated the way you deserve. That's why this pattern keeps repeating. Not because you're not smart enough to see it, but because you've become used to staying longer than you should. And when you always stay longer, you always give them enough time to become exactly the kind of person you were trying to avoid. If you've made it this far, you're probably starting to realize something. The problem isn't that you need to find someone better. It's that you need to become a version of yourself that toxic people cannot stay with. Not by completely changing who you are, but by changing how you respond in the smallest moments. Because this loop doesn't begin at the climax. It begins in subtle details. The ones you used to overlook. A comment that makes you slightly uncomfortable, but you laugh it off. An action that feels disrespectful, but you tell yourself, they probably didn't mean it. A faint sense of unease, but you choose not to face it, because you don't want to disrupt the connection you have. But those very moments are where you can change the entire outcome, not by reacting strongly. No need to argue, no need to over-explain, but by stopping. Stop justifying others. Stop trying to understand them before you understand yourself. And most importantly, stop staying once something starts to feel wrong, because someone who truly respects you will never require you to sacrifice your feelings just to keep them. And someone who needs you to stay silent, to endure, to understand them, isn't staying because of who you are. They're staying because you allow them to. And this is where everything begins to change. Not when you learn to read others better, but when you start trusting your first feeling, that subtle feeling, but very real, the one you used to ignore. When you begin to respect that feeling, you will start leaving sooner, saying no sooner, and most importantly, you will no longer stay long enough for a normal person to become toxic in your life. Maybe after all of this, you'll realize something very different from what you once believed. You're not unlucky in love. You're not attracting bad people randomly. You're simply carrying a way of loving that allows the wrong people to stay longer than they should. But that doesn't mean you have to change who you are. You don't need to become less kind. You don't need to become less empathetic. You just need to learn not to give those things to the wrong people. Because in the end, the question is not how deeply you can love, but whether you can leave at the right time. And the moment you can do that, everything will change. Not because the world becomes better, but because you are no longer the person who allows the wrong things to continue in your life. If you've ever felt like you always meet the wrong person, try looking back not to blame yourself, but to understand yourself more clearly. And if there's one thing you take away from this video, leave a comment below. I'm starting to see my pattern now.